Alright guys, Technical here, back again today, and a few interesting things came out over the last day or so. We have some updates on the rumours from yesterday's video, in addition to this news, or at least CDL Intel Kroenke at that account, saying that John potentially might not be on a team even as a substitute for the upcoming season, which is pretty big news. A lot of you guys have been talking in the comment section below about, like, these rosters, like, where exactly is John, right? He's very well respected among the pros, he's a former world champion, of course. Didn't have the best Black Ops 4 season by any means, let's not, put that out of the way, but he's been a very, very solid player for multiple titles, and I'm sure he would have been a consideration for a lot of teams to potentially be picked up. So why potentially isn't that happening, we will go into in the coming minutes here, and the fact that Kroenke says it on Twitter kind of implies that it's not necessarily that he just hasn't heard John going anywhere, but could be, but maybe he's even heard to the contrary. So we'll go into details on that in a few minutes time. Like if you guys enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Firstly, to discuss this Black Ops 2 tournament that finished yesterday, Hitch and the TST guys did a fantastic job. I think they raised like $25,000 overall. Crazy. It was so good to watch. For those of you who haven't followed Black Ops 2 before, and maybe they did watch it a little bit, it's crazy how ugly the game is to watch at times, given that the screen takes up like a third of the screen or whatever, the actual gameplay, unless you make it full screen. But that was the first ever attempt we ever had in Call of Duty at a CODcaster. Before that, in Modern Warfare 3, you had to like manually change teams and just spectate. So such a good game. It was so good to watch, so satisfying. The maps were so good. I'll share with you guys a clip in a second of the very first losers round 1 when Aches and Co, so this old complexity team effectively, were Game 5, Round 11, and, well, this is what happened.
Alright, Gunless and Pristini.
Karma just pushing middle
mid.
map.
He's pushing middle
Oh my
map.
god, and Karma gets taken out Gunless as well.
It's a 2v4.
Just like that.
6 out of 7 has 2. Doesn't get a hit on that.
Aches trying to stun up somebody in mid.
Oh, no.
Man, complexity.
Placer finds 1. It's a
Clay
2v3.
does, and he found R-City as well. That if there's anybody that you want to knock out in round 11, it's got to be R-Cities when he's playing like this. Aches chilling in the catwalk.
Oh my god!
They got run over by the train!
They got run over by the train!
Round 11!
Pristini,
There's just no way, but Gunless finds Clay. And it's all up to Aches. In a
Aches in a
1v2 versus 2.
Aches finds 1.
Finds 1 in the ring. He
hits him
challenges
as a
an 1v1. 1 versus 1.
The 1v1.
For the 1v2, round 11 Aches. There's no way.
There's no way.
There's just
Jack.
no possibility that it ends like this. Oh my! Oh my!
So insane scenes when they played up against Gunless there, and Gunless's team at least, and Pristini gets run over by a train which shouldn't have even been enabled. It was meant to be disabled, dynamic map elements, but it still was enabled, but they just went along with it, and then Aches clutches a 1v2, ice in his veins, and then they go on to romp through the entire losers bracket. They won, I think, 11 or 13 series in a row until they get into the second series, and he says they got reverse swept. I didn't get a chance to watch this, unfortunately, and on Gamepedia it seems to imply that they lost 3-1 in the final series, so I don't know which story is accurate. I'm sure you guys will let me know down below, but yeah, eventually they came second in the tournament. They actually lost to Rod Squad of Johnny, Twiz, Nelson, and TCM, so pretty impressive stuff, but it was just a really fun tournament, great to watch, and to do it all for charity as well, to do it for Movember is just fantastic. So just honestly a fantastic weekend of Call of Duty and esports more generally, with the CS stuff and the Overwatch League stuff going on, so really, really cool. But moving on from thatwards then, what am I on about? Anyway, we have 2 confirmed rosters so far. I thought this would be an interesting question that CoD Gamepedia asks yesterday. Now we have 2 confirmed rosters. Who would be winning this series between London and New York? Now, we have a lot of varied answers here down below. We have London hands down, New York easily, London, New York easily, New York easily, London, pretty tight, London, New York City. Interesting. I've been wondering what you thought as well, because obviously I'm pretty biased here. I do think it'd be a pretty close matchup. I honestly think these teams on paper are really, really well matched. I don't think it's very easy to determine a difference between them. When you look at it from a subs perspective, so you look at Dylan and Jerd versus like Zuma and Temp, if those were to be the sub-duo, which it probably would be, like, that's a very difficult one. I'd maybe have to favour London slightly, but then again, maybe I'm doing that off Black Ops 4 form, right? We don't really know exactly what kind of level Dylan is going to put up on a boots on the ground game, or like on a proper boots on the ground game, even though he did kind of do very well towards the end of World War II when he played on champs on Brash Esports, but we know that Jerd's going to be great. And then you've kind of got rated versus accuracy, who can be pretty damn closely matched match, to be honest, at least looking at World War II form. And then you've got Wuskin and Scraps versus Zero and Attach, which honestly is a pretty damn close matchup as well. So I honestly think these teams are really well matched. I think it would be a game 5, and it would all come down to the S&D, which maybe I would slightly favour New York with the kind of S&D stars these guys have. So I'd probably say 3-2 New York, but I really do think it's a close matchup. Be interested to hear what you think down below. Just wanted to show you maybe a minute of this video with NRG CEO Andy Miller talking about the addition of Hex. He also kind of implies that Scump and Formal might be coming, or not necessarily Formal, but that Scump might be coming over from where Hector has been before on OpTic Gaming. So I'll just play maybe a minute of it. It's pretty interesting.
Bringing Hector onto Energy is a culmination of a lot of 3 or 4 years of work. So we're blessed that he picked us in a way. He had a lot of options, believe me, and we made him our co-CEO, which was a big statement that it wasn't just about Call of Duty and his historic background there. It's about his leadership and his vision, his content, his social skills, merchandising, design. We just like him to be much more the face of the business than me. I was courting him. We were dating, so I would fly down literally to Frisco just to take him, or him to take me to barbecue, and we'd sit and talk about our philosophies and what we wanted to build here, and we're very aligned in our vision here. So the second he came on to Energy, we were obviously able to secure the 12th and final spot for Call of Duty League with Chicago, which is amazing. There was no other place to go. That was it. If we were going to do this for Energy, it was going to be Hector, and if Hector was going to do this, it was going to be Chicago, back to his roots, where he spent the biggest chunk of his life, where he grew up, and where the OpTic history is, as well as some of his players, which we haven't announced our roster, but I promise you there's going to be some superstars on it and a lot of Chicago history there.
So if you guys want to check that out, at Cheddar Esports on Twitter will be your home. Now, these were the rumours that we looked through yesterday. Paris, Zed, Dens, Shox, and maybe Luca. Kisma, Alex. Apparently now Alex is pretty much solidified onto Midnight since this announcement, but we'll have a look at the updates in just a second. Potentially Breezy, Sensor not being considered, so just in case you guys missed yesterday's video, I'll just go through these very quick. Eggs, Decimate, Accra, and Saints being linked. Alex looking very likely onto Minnesota, and then these Toronto names that we had linked as well. And this was the second part of the full rosters that have been confirmed. If you guys are out of the loop and just stumbling across this video, these are the, not confirmed by the way, just to make that clear, these are the rosters that we've seen for a long time being heavily rumoured and nothing has changed. The London spot has now been confirmed, as is the New York spot, and 3 of the players on Minnesota are confirmed as well, which could be a potential home for John, right? It would kind of make sense. We'll go on to that in a second though when we have a look back at these rosters. But interestingly, CDL does an update. This is Kroenke, CDL Intel. Does an update on this yesterday regarding Paris, Alex, and Looney. So Paris, apparently these are the names for consideration. Zed, Dens, Kismet, Luca, Breezy, Shox, and Phantoms. I don't know who the starting 5 are. So who would you choose out of this to be your starting 5? I think I would probably go Zed. I'd be very tempted to go Zed, Dens, and Shox, but then I don't exactly know where Phantoms fits in, maybe as an assault rifle. I don't know if you make in the main AR, but it's really interesting to see like Dens, Shox, and Luca all in consideration here, of course, from Down Under. So I don't exactly know what you're going to do. Apparently Breezy is was initially being considered for the starting roster, but now may end up being put on the bench, having just come top 4 at Champs, alongside Kisma on that Enigma 6 team, sorry. So really strange to see what's going to happen here, but of course there's 7 players, and I imagine these will be the 7, if that is to be true, that will be on the team, because you have to have 2 substitutes and you have to have 5 starting players. So I guess these are the 7 we're looking at. And then Minnesota saying Alex is here, Looney is on Toronto. Other name I've heard is a seam from not from a regular source. So interesting stuff, because when you look at Minnesota, this is the kind of team that you can imagine John being on, right? You've got Silly, you've got Assault, you've got GodRx. They need some SMG players, and you could put Alex on this team. That perfectly makes sense. And maybe John could go there as well. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. Before we get on to that real quick, just wanted to have a look through this, where Bosun Killer replying to these rumors from yesterday saying like, lol bro, what are these players? Implying that maybe they should be the ones on these teams, and I'm not convinced. Anyway, this is what Kroenke tweets out last night then. There's a very high chance, like this is talking 80% chance, John will not be on a roster for the 2020 season, not even as a substitute. So this is what a lot of people have been talking about for a long time. John, of course, is a guy that you would expect to get onto one of these teams, no problem. Let's have a look at the full rosters here, the kind of guys that are getting onto teams. Like if J-Cap's walking into a team this good, John should be no problems on a team. And I know a lot of the pros respect him, and I know for good reason, right? He's a world champion. He's been one of the best players in CoD history, to be honest. He's probably in a lot of people's top 10 all-time players from what he's done all the way from Black Ops 2 all the way through. Even in Black Ops 4, when he didn't have a good game, he still won an event. He had reasonable stats when Luminosity were doing well. He was pretty damn good on frequency as well. So obviously a very, very talented player, and someone that obviously franchise players are going to be looking at as an option, right? So it's interesting to see that isn't the case. I cannot imagine this is not personal reasons, right? Because if he was really trying, he was putting himself out there, he was trying to get on a franchise spot, some of the names that have been associated with franchise spots would surely be in consideration, like lower down the pecking order than John, especially with a lot of experienced players having experience playing with him and, appreciating him as a good talent. I know that he has had some issues with maybe work ethic, and people have been talking about he doesn't show to practice show up to practice on time, and these kind of things, which that maybe there's some truth to that. So maybe that's something to consider. But this came out on the Reddit. So Sunday God says 100% he had a bad year, but not even a substitute. That's got to be because of personal reasons. Now Clarence says, I was watching his stream the other day. He seems to hint that he was dealing with some behind-the-scenes issues when talking to Apathy. Didn't clip it though. And Kroenke, of course, the runner of that account who just made this tweet, says, upward arrow, like this is what I think is going on. So this would be really interesting to see this come to fruition. Of course, these are the rumoured rosters. I thought it would make quite a lot of sense for him to go on to a team like Minnesota, right? We have that confirmed through Silly Assault and GodRx. We have Brian Saint as coach. John would make sense onto that kind of roster, and of course he has so much experience playing with a lot of the veterans in the scene that would think about picking him up. So it's interesting to see that's not going to be the case. I wonder what you guys think about it down below, whether there's anything you can think about why that would be the case, especially if he's still streaming. Why, if you're still streaming, like what are your behind the scenes issues that are preventing you from going to be getting on a roster next season? Because we haven't really heard this from any of Call of Duty's most well-known names, that they would be retiring or would be doing whatever. Because why would you retire when there's now so much money being pumped into Call of Duty? Obviously it doesn't make sense to retire, so it must be some other personal reasons. And I'll be interested to hear you guys, your guys' thoughts on what that could be, because I'm a little bit stumped by this, to be honest. But it definitely makes sense given the trends of not seeing John on any of these rosters that we've probably expected to the last few weeks. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like if you did, subscribe if you're new. As always, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching as always, and I will see you next time.